Welcome to Cannabis Business Minds podcast with your host, Simone Samaluka-Radzins. Join me where I'll take you inside the ins and outs of this brand new and exciting business called cannabis. Connect with me on calagia.com and follow us on social media as well. And here's today's show. Welcome back to another season of Cannabis Business Minds. This is the fourth season, and thanks for bearing with me for what seemed to me minutes, but was a year without the last podcast. And, so much has happened within that last year. Personally, I'm sure all of you have very many things that, have gone on in your career and your lives, and would love to know about them. And business-wise in the cannabis industry, we have seen some incredible growth. We've seen the Farm Bill pass at the end of 2018. Yeah, we're still talking 2018 here. It's been a while. We've seen more and more states introduce medical and adult use cannabis reform and legislation. We saw Illinois at the beginning of 2020 open its first week of adult use medical sales with hitting close to 20 million in revenue, surpassing much of the other states that have legalized, right? And so we continue to see movement and evolution into the cannabis industry. And that evolution and movement is so fascinating, right? We are seeing this growth, and we are seeing in California, in other states that have legalized, this struggle that is happening at the same time as this perceived growth. And we forget, because in 2025, we're expected to see about 30 billion of a market industry. That's significant. And I'll go double check myself because it seems that significant, right? And we're seeing this massive growth. And with that massive growth comes consumption. And with that massive consumption, yes, comes dollars into people's pocketbooks, but because there's such massive consumption, and packaging in the cannabis industry is a requirement by, regulation, and not just, this cute little packaging. We're talking child-resistant, child-proof, almost nobody can open it type of packaging. We're seeing the environmental impact of cannabis really start impacting the environment. And so we think about conscious decisions as consumers. Where will we be buying this? How will this impact not only myself, but the world? And the next guests that we have are two business owners. It's a family-run business based in Southern California. They've been running their business since 2013. And they have the mission to smoke the ocean clean. And we're going to talk about on this podcast episode, really, what does that mean? How can they do this? And what are the impacts right now of packaging and plastic into our environment? And if you haven't read anything, make sure that you head on over to Calagia Cannabis Business Minds, because I've got a lot of statistics to show you. And we'll talk about them on the podcast, but we have to make better decisions as consumers. We have to make better decisions as business owners of what we're doing and how that impacts the environment. And so please stay tuned for this episode of Cannabis Business Minds, because we're going to talk about the environment. We're going to talk about packaging. We're going to talk about this business and their entrepreneurial story behind it. And of course, we couldn't not talk about California, because we've seen this crazy state go from, no regulation to full regulation. And now we're almost 3 years into it, and we're going to talk about that impact that it's had on this business. So stay tuned. Super excited that you are joining Cannabis Business Minds. So this is, I think, what really caught my eye was back in November, I got some release from Alec about the ribbons, and how much, between November and December, how much ribbon is used and how that really impacts the environment. Sure. And I was in LA for a long time and working in the cannabis space down there, but I never had heard of your brand or your company before. And so I started just kind of just getting a little bit obsessed because of all the things that have been happening with the environment and how we don't talk about it enough. And I wanted to get you on to kind of explain. I mean, you have a fascinating, I think you have a fascinating story. I think you do, because you've been in this space since 2013. You've got a big mission. And, the whole goal is to understand, like, why'd you start this? Like, who are you guys? Why'd you start this company? And just kind of talk about from that idea to today in 40 minutes. So I guess, like, we could start, like, who are you both?
I'm Patrick.
And my name is Mary.
Yeah, and we have just had our anniversary.
Yeah. Yeah, 24 years married.
Yep.
Oh, congratulations. It's a big accomplishment.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So I have 3 kids. And like you said, we started this in 2013.
Yeah.
We actually, at that time, didn't have a lot of money. We were being evicted from our place. And we started into the cannabis industry. We started making edibles and selling them in 2013, just because it was something that we could do to make money. And lo and behold, everybody loved Mary's caramels.
Right?
Real big hit. The dispensaries loved them. The patients loved them. And everyone loved the caramels that she made. So that's kind of how we got started doing it.
Really?
Yeah, and then he would go out and sell them. And we'd put them in glass jars right by the register, and people would just grab them. And it became a big favorite among a lot of patients.
Oh, yeah. So it was kind of like this, like, chewy, were they little bite-sized caramels, like, dosed up?
Yeah, this big. And they were
like 2 bites.
Yeah.
Yeah. 2-bite caramels.
I could do it with 1 bite. For most people, it'll probably take you 2 bites.
Yeah. And then this was, because this is 2013, so it's before all of the true regulation. So you'd have kind of the flexibility of figuring out, different types of collectives to be in and really talking to patients a lot more.
Sure. And there was a lot of mom and pops in the industry.
Yeah.
Because you could just make a product in your kitchen.
Yeah.
And then just wrap it at your dining room table and go out and start selling it. It was cottage industry like that at that time.
Oh, yeah.
The candies were 120 milligrams.
Oh, my. That helped a lot of people. Oh, my gosh. I think I would have been like.
Yeah.
That's probably why they were so popular.
Yeah, probably.
Totally. I remember it was probably like 2014, 2015. Somebody made some cool Cheetos. And it was just like yes. And so, like, the evolution of the products is just so interesting, especially like with the compliance coming, in and more kind of robust and requiring a lot of kind of changes. So 2013, you kind of dip your toes in cannabis, and because you'd been doing a lot of kind of philanthropy though as well, right? In your former life, helping a lot of people on Skid Row and doing all of that. And I read somewhere that that's kind of also where you recognize that cannabis was helping a lot of people.
Yeah, definitely.
Sure. And that's what had happened. We were working on Skid Row. We were there, 7 or 8 years, something like that. Yeah. And then we had a shelter that housed 70 men and 30 women. Mm-hmm. But then there were structural issues with the building from prior earthquakes or cracks in the foundation. So the city said the building could be used for warehouse purposes, but you couldn't have people living there because there was actually structurally unfit. And we weren't able to find another building that was within the zone. So we found ourselves sort of, after 7 years of working with this, with no job and no money, because we gave all our money to help the homeless. So everything, we were nonprofits, everything that came right back. So we got no money. And then we decided cannabis was such a good fit for us because we figured we could do something and make money and at the same time help people.
Yes.
We were interested in helping people. Before we went to Skid Row, we ran a daycare for low-income and disabled kids in Detroit.
Oh, wow.
When we went to Skid Row. So we always wanted to do something to help and to give help. We thought cannabis was a great way to do it because we could generate an income for ourselves and at the same time be doing something that's good that's helping people.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I think especially if you're an entrepreneur, you want to have that passion that it's not just dollar bills coming in. Like, you want to see something, some aspect of passion. So you start this idea. So could you walk us through just a little bit about, coming up with the caramel, 2013, you're like, okay, let's do this. Like, how was that like first year or two?
It was crazy. I would be up like all hours of the night making these caramels, and you had to wrap them in wax paper and then wrap them with a sticker. So everything had to be done twice. And all these orders. It was crazy. Samples. We were able to give away 30 milligram samples, and for $4.20, and we'd be up for like 2 days straight. Like, it was crazy. It's fun.
Oh my gosh, that's so crazy. Yeah, I mean, it was the Wild West then. Yeah. It really was. So, I mean, for you guys, was it kind of just building and building and building on that? So getting kind of your kind of systems dialed in and helping more people like each year how did the company kind of evolve year on year before regulation hits?
Yeah, before regulation. So our caramels were a big hit. So we had business in a lot of different dispensaries. And we just kept on adding on more products as we made connections in the industry and through friends of ours. So we started selling concentrates. Then we started with the vape pens. So now we had 3 different products. We had concentrates, shatters, vape pens, and caramels all at the same time. So we kind of developed our own little portfolio through our network of friends and people we knew in the industry. And we had friends who made concentrates, we had friends who made vape pens, and just kind of all worked together to, and then we worked to try to bring the brands into the dispensaries to do the sales, to do the branding, the marketing, and that's kind of our forte.
Yeah. And then when did the concept of like, when did you kind of get attuned to the ocean and just kind of changing, I guess not changing the mission, maybe speaking the mission about wanting to kind of help with ocean, like our oceans and the environment? Like, how's that when did that start playing in?
So that kind of evolved over time, and it kind of evolved with the legal market and the regulations with the legal market. So our brand, we had a vape pen brand called Ocean in the medical market. And we named it Ocean just because we love the ocean. We love the ocean. We came out to California from Detroit the first time. I remember we went down to the ocean, and Mary saw the ocean for the first time, and she actually started crying because it was like just overwhelming.
It's so beautiful. Like,
such a beautiful,
so strong.
We love the ocean, but then with the compliance, or the legalization and stuff like that, there became a lot more compliance and regulation issues. So the packaging became more cumbersome because you needed something that was child resistant. You needed something that was tamper evident. Most things, there's a lot of information that has to go on the package. And all that stuff's great stuff because it helps protect people, helps keep people safe. You know what you're buying, especially with the vape crisis that had gone on recently. You want something that's tamper evident and you know what you're getting. So that's all good stuff. But what it does is it creates a lot of waste in the industry. And the first packaging was so big and cumbersome. We wanted to fit everything on it. We were like, man, this is ridiculous. And that's kind of how it evolved. Just looking for creative ways that we could be compliant with the regulations, but at the same time not adding to this huge waste problem in the cannabis industry. And a lot of people in the cannabis industry, I mean, it's a known thing. It's a big waste problem. There's so many regulations and boxes and jars and caps and child-resistant tubes and these tubes and labeling requirements. It creates a lot of waste. So that's kind of how the whole ocean thing, we started looking for different ways we could do that. And then we found the people at Santa Packaging and Ocean Works and what they were doing with cleaning the ocean and making this plastic and child resistant and everything like that that's out of the plastic that's been pulled out of the ocean. We're like, oh my gosh,
we have to do
this is great. This is like exactly just fits with our brand. It fits with who we are. And it's like, not only can we help people through cannabis, but at the same time, we can do something good for environment. And we were like, all aboard 100%.
Yes. Well, I started doing all this research. I mean, like after I got that press release, and then I was like, okay, I need to just learn a little bit more. Because last year, I feel like that's when the world like acknowledged a little bit louder, like, hey, we've got an environmental crisis, like a problem. And I think there's such a big misconception about plastic in general. Like, oh, I'm recycling my water bottle and that's really great. And I just put it in my recycling bin and it's like going to be just recycled into something. And even like on your website, it seems like you guys are pretty attuned to it. It's like, I got one stat from your site, 95% of the plastic that is used is a one-time use.
Yeah, it's true. It's crazy.
It's so crazy. And then what's interesting, I'm just curious, with sauna and the packaging and kind of what your thoughts are, is that I also found out that plastic is, if you're just creating it, it's created out of fossil fuels.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Right. But what you guys are doing is like you're repurposing the actual plastic, which obviously is the best way to do it, but it's more costly. And I feel like that's maybe why other businesses don't do it.
100%.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we don't care. We would rather do something.
No, you can't. I think that's the point, right? Like,
charge more than, if you go in, ours is the same price as something that doesn't use every other brand. But if we can do good, even if we make a little bit less, it's
that's our commitment.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and I think, I look at your company as a way that companies need to start thinking, right? Like, also on your site, by 2050, if we don't do anything, we're going to have more plastic in the oceans than fish.
That's crazy, right?
It's like, yes, it's like you say the statistic and then you're like, whoa, like that's just really, really depressing.
There's the amount of plastic that's dumped into the ocean. It's like a whole garbage truck filled with plastic every minute. There's so much, and it's like it's a very abundant resource, and we need to all start really thinking about this and utilizing this resource that we have.
Mm-hmm. Have you guys done, being involved in the industry for such a long time? Have you, Patrick, I saw you in an interview or read an interview about the vape crisis, so I definitely want to talk about that. But are you involved in lobbying? Like, have you just about packaging? And I was just even thinking before I got you on, like, are there any discussions about giving credit to cannabis businesses that are doing, packaging like you are? At the state level, you know what I mean?
I haven't really thought about that.
Yeah, I haven't thought about that either, but yeah, that would be great. We're not really involved in any lobbying efforts at this point.
Yeah.
But that's something that we like to get into. The whole switch from the medical to the recreational market has been extremely busy. So we've been just trying to navigate that whole seas.
Oh my God. Well, talk to me about it because, so I guess just to recap, I've always done most of my stuff about California, but just to recap for listeners. So 2018 is when both medical and adult use in California, really the implementation of the regulation started. California has local and state licensing, and there's a crippling tax for cultivators as well as dispensaries. And so it's originally, the system was set up, unfortunately, to not be successful at first, I think, right? And so businesses, like I think about you guys, I'm like, how are you doing it? Like, this is you're going uphill.
Yeah.
Right? And so what kind of, not complaining, but like how are you guys doing? Like, how is that? Like, you must be so busy. Like, talk to us about this.
Yeah, for sure. We just keep going. We're not going to give up.
No, we're not giving up.
We're not stopping. We just keep going. Good. One of the most important things, if you just don't give up and you keep going, you finally get there.
Yeah.
We just say, if we can just take one step forward every day, a year from now we'll be 365 steps forward.
Yeah.
And instead of trying to do, become the biggest brand in California overnight, we're just focused on just keep going and keep going and keep going and keep going and, navigating all of the different obstacles as they come.
Yeah.
So one of the things that's been really difficult though is, especially in the LA area, the not regulating the illicit market. So there's a lot of illicit shops out there. And a lot of the consumers still, they don't know. A lot of times you go into the shops, they look just like a legal shop that's down the street, and people will go in and buy stuff and they don't even know All they know is
it's a weed store, and I can go in,
and it's cheaper.
So it's got to be legal, right? So.
Yeah, that's been a big problem. It's hurt a lot of the dispensaries. And then in turn, it hurts a lot of the brands and stuff like that. So our business has mostly been focused in LA. Outlying areas around, a little bit in Orange County and the IE and San Diego, stuff like that. But most of our focus was in LA. Back when we were doing medical, there were so many shops in LA. We had all the business we needed right there. I mean, we just, we were just the same thing, we were just kept growing slowly. But we didn't need to go to Northern California, stuff like that. So we are making a big push to go statewide at this point too. So that'll help us a lot. So we've been spending a lot of time really focusing on getting the distribution networks and sales channels and materials and all that stuff for the rest of California. We, 90% of our business right now is in LA. So that's kind of hurt us more than some of the other brands who may have been more spread out across the state. Because like I said, LA's been really lax on getting the illicit shops or the illegal shops. So,
and it's interesting. I mean, there's like so many things I'm like, okay, we have to talk a little bit more about this. But if we could just like focus on illicit for a moment. I mean, it's true. You go into a shop as a consumer and you might not know. And then you go and then there's like a whole distribution network, right? I mean, there's an illicit supply chain that's happening. And, consumers are unaware. I think you nailed it on the head. Do you think it's just enforcement that needs to happen? Or what do you think is the solution? And is that what is the solution, and I think we know who's responsible to kind of perform the solution, but, what can we be doing collectively to change that?
I think it's probably enforcement and education.
Yeah.
Because it is true that a lot of the products that you would get in the illicit shops, you don't know what the pesticides or chemicals that have been used. You don't know what's in your vape cart. You don't know what's in your edibles. They're just not tested. So even though it's been difficult and coming from both worlds, we see that the recreational and the whole legal market being a good thing, because it really makes it a lot more safe for the consumer. And if the consumer would realize, hey, this jar of flour might be a little bit less expensive, but I don't know what they sprayed it with. I don't know what chemicals are. All the flour in the legal market is tested to parts per billion for mold, pesticides, every different type of
heavy metals. I mean, the testing is so intense.
So stringent.
Yeah.
And it's difficult for us for sometimes from moving from the medical to this market. But at the same time, it's really good because it really, really, really helps protect the consumer. So when you go into a legal shop and you buy a vape cart, you're not going to have to worry about what is in that. That has been tested. With California, it has the most stringent testing in the world. So I think it's both. I think it's the enforcement, and at the same time, if you could really educate people, educate the consumers, and they could understand that would help a ton too. Because it's not worth it to save $5 or $10 if you're going to end up in the hospital, or if you're going to be smoking lead and not know.
I mean, it's just that I kind of wanted to do an episode just on the vape crisis in general, just to kind of, I think there was such a misconception by the media of like what really, I think a lot of people, if they just like first glance at, oh my God, there's this vape crisis, everybody's dying, it's cannabis, right? And they don't dive in a little bit deeper and like, no, there's actually like vitamin E oil, and this is from an illicit market, and these are the things that you need to watch out for. There's such a negative impact to the industry as a whole. And I mean, even in Oregon, I think the governor at one point was like, yeah, I think we might need to remove, certain things from the dispensaries. What's been the impact? I mean, we think about product portfolio, we think about all that kind of stuff. For you guys, when that happened, knowing that you do sell concentrates, knowing that you do sell vape pens, is it getting out there ahead of the game and like, hey, well, this is just kind of what you said, we're getting this tested, you know that you don't have to worry. But, how did that, what's a silver lining to the vape crisis for a vape company?
So what we actually hope that the benefit of that happening is that people are more educated now about the illicit vapes. So people are not, the whole illicit market in general kind of exposed a lot of that. So although we did see our vape sales definitely decline during that, we're seeing them start to go up. So our hope that as people start to realize like, hey, this is the vitamin E oil and this is the illicit market vapes and all that, then they will gravitate more towards the legal market and the stuff that's been tested, because it can really be a health issue. So hopefully that's a silver lining, for sure, that it pushes people more towards the legal market and away from the illicit market.
Yeah, absolutely. And then how are you guys, I love your social media, very engaging. Your website's very cool. I've always found it very interesting, right? With the supply chain, how it is in California. It's separated: cultivation, manufacturing, distribution, unless you have a micro business, right? And then dispensary delivery service. And so it seems like it's just so hard for a brand that's like a manufacturer to have many touch points with consumers, right? To have kind of that education. How do you get to know your customers? How do you get to have those touch points?
Mary.
I go into a lot of the stores and do like staff trainings. And I had done a lot of my own like in-store events. So I love to talk to the patients and on the bud tenders and just kind of educate them on our brand, our company, and just what we do and stuff. So that's really because I love to go in the stores.
Yeah, she's out talking with tenders and managers all the time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, I think that's kind of what you have to do. I mean, you have to be the voice of the company. You have to sell.
Yeah, definitely.
So how do you split? You're a family-run business.
Yes.
So how do you split? And you've been married for 24 years, which is like so amazing that you can do business together, be happily married, and be smiling right now. How do you split? I mean, like a cannabis business, you have so many different hats. You have so many different roles, right? What do you both do? How does that work?
Well, when we started, it was actually back in like 2015, I think it was, or 2006. I started doing sales. I kind of stepped out of the role of actually making the caramels, and our daughter stepped in, and so she started making them. So that was really cool.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and then our son would help us do like in-store events, and he would help us with packaging and stuff. So then I would go out and do sales. So I would spend a lot of time in the stores doing the event, things like that.
We did. We've always been. We just do whatever it takes to get it done. Whatever it is, we don't care. We just do it.
Yeah.
So if it's cleaning the kitchen and making caramels, if it's out selling, if it's doing the accounting or whatever it is, we just do whatever it needs to be done. But at this point, we're starting to gravitate more into a role where I'm doing a lot of the branding and marketing. Mary's doing a lot of the sales support for our sales team. So Mary's taking sort of the role of like a manufacturer's sales rep. She's out in the stores. She's with the reps. She's kind of taking that role, and I'm kind of doing more of the branding and marketing at this point.
Yeah. Oh,
we have Alex and the design team and that. So we've but we've always just been the type of people who, it's whatever like whatever needs to be done, take out this on that one, just get it done and keep going.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you have so many pots, right, you have to make sure that you're like moving them all the time, because if one's just forgotten, that's going to affect the business.
Sure, of course.
Right? Well, and it seems like, if you're trying to kind of expand, which is just I'm so excited for you guys. And it's such a big feat, like tackling California, because the consumer is so different. Like the LA consumer is different than the OC consumer, who's different than the Oakland consumer, right? And so, I'm curious, like if your branding and marketing kind of affects that, and just like even how, Mary, like you're probably coaching your sales staff of like how to get in, because is it harder now with regulation to get into dispensaries than it was before?
A ton.
Really?
Way harder.
Yeah, a lot more difficult at this time.
Definitely.
But we hope that everybody in California loves the ocean and wants to help clean it up.
Oh, yeah.
No matter where you're from, if you're in California, we love our environment, we love our state, we love our ocean. It goes all the way up the coast from Mexico to Oregon. So that's how we want to connect with everybody in California, is to that ocean, and everybody kind of banding together, coming together, and not only getting high, having fun, smoking cannabis, but doing something good for the environment at the same time.
Oh, absolutely. And consumers, like, there's the socially conscious consumer, and that's who's actually growing every day. That's making their decisions, who are okay. And if you're priced the same way, there's no reason why somebody doesn't actually purchase it. So that's very exciting. What are your goals? So we got 2020, new decade, new year. What is, where do you want to be at the end of this year?
By the end of this year, we want to be throughout the entire state of California. So like I said, we want to span from like LA, Southern California, throughout all of the state. And then we also want to then start expanding into other states, because that would be our goal, to be in multiple states that have recreational and medical cannabis programs in their state. So that's our goal.
That's a good one. That's a good one. And maybe take it to Michigan?
Yeah,
definitely.
Definitely.
Right? Because I think if you could do Michigan, because what's so cool is then there's a huge aspect, I think, in cannabis and being from California of just brand, the brand identity, what we have to offer, all of that. And, even Canada, it doesn't have as many good brands. And so being able to, because it seems like you've got your system down, right? Like you've got your products, seems like manufacturing, you figured that out, the portfolio, the product mix. And when you focus on sales and marketing, so much of it's, it's the system that you have, right? And so then being able to, if you can get California from bottom to top, I have no worry, except, patience with regulation, that it wouldn't be too hard to get into other states.
No, we agree. Sure, yeah, because California is the big one. Yeah, if you can be a well-known, recognized brand in California, then expanding into Michigan, Illinois, Nevada, Arizona, the other states, it definitely goes a lot easier for sure. Yeah. So that's why we're kind of focused on California first, is one step at a time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because it's resources, right? Because when you're small, you have to really focus. You have to prioritize on, of course, the whole goal is everyone in the world needs to know about it. But you have to like you said, I love the quote, just take those baby steps, and then in 1 year you're 365 steps, right? You have to take those little bits. Mary, a question for you.
Okay.
You're at the dispensaries, you're talking to consumers, what have you noticed? Any trends that you've noticed from the last year or two?
There's just such more of a wide variety of people that you see coming into the stores.
Really?
Yeah. Elderly people, just people, soccer moms, just really just, it runs the whole gamut of who's coming in. Yeah. More women.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really cool. I've gone into dispensaries, and I went into this one in Orange County, and there was a whole bus load of seniors that had come in.
Wait, they got off the bus?
Yeah, they coming to the dispensary.
I love that. That's amazing.
Right? And people just using cannabis to...
You didn't see that before.
No.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really cool, just to see so many different types of people coming in, using cannabis and helping them just to feel better.
Tourists?
Yeah.
People from all over
the world, actually.
People coming in.
That's pretty cool, especially if you could somehow capture their information, because that to me is one of the not easiest ways, but such a great way to kind of build brand awareness, right? Because if somebody's coming from, Canada, but let's say Japan or something like that, clearly they can't take the cannabis back, but just having that experience, then they go tell their friends oh, I had the best time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's really cool.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And then have you been to, because of the event license, what's it like right now? 2019, 2020, I guess we're 1 month in 2020, but I thought two really cool things that California had to offer was there's this event license, where they did like kind of like Outside Lands, like up in the Bay Area last year, but like this whole kind of like cannabis thing that was not just like your High Times cup, but like this experience. Have you been to any of these, or any thoughts, or like any information that your consumers have been to or your partners have?
The new ones are, since the legal market, we've been to the Hall of Flowers.
Yeah.
How is that one?
So cool.
Yeah, that was great. We liked that
really
a lot.
Cool.
Yeah, very much. We're very much impressed with the event, with the people who put it on. It was a great event. One of the unique things about that event is the first day of the event is only for buyers and dispensary managers. So I think each dispensary only gets a certain amount of tickets for the event that they can send people to. So it's very industry.
That's good.
The second day of the event, everybody can come.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, that was a great event. It was really well put together. But that's the only one that we've been to so far.
Yeah.
Since the legalization.
Yeah.
And then last we would go to like the High Times Cannabis Cups ones, and they stuff. And they still have those, but I haven't been to any of the recent ones.
Yeah. Well, I prefer like the ones that are innovative, right? That are kind of like capturing experiences, or if you're a business owner, like you actually can do business there, because some of the ones, like the ones in Vegas, like the bigger ones, they cater much more to the people that are new to cannabis. And I feel like a Hall of Flowers, like if you're in the supply chain, that's great because you can meet people that can help you in your business, right? Have you checked out any of the cafes that have been in LA?
There's only been one, I think, that's opened up so far.
Yeah.
We haven't been there yet.
No. Well, I moved from LA to Portland for the last year. So it's been, I came back to LA a few times in 2019, and then I'm moving to France in a week.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm really excited. So, interesting enough, like next time we connect, I'll have much more information about like the French and the European kind of cannabis scene, but it's definitely not where the US is at, but it's catching up in a very interesting way.
Cool. That's a big move, right?
It is.
Portland. Yeah, that's great though.
I'm excited. I was thinking, at one point, how cool would it be to like, help brands? Because I love tourism. I love international. So I was like, how could I get brands? Like at one point, it's not evolved enough, like the whole system there, but how could I get US brands to Europe? And trying to figure out that, because I think at one point it could be a very interesting niche, and I think it could help a lot of brands. So that's kind of one of my goals.
Awesome.
Yeah. Eventually, I think the cannabis industry will go, federally legal, and then even, across the world where brands can,
right.
be all across the world.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Oh my God, it would be so great. So 2020, one more question before I get to the speed round. It's an election year. And obviously, whoever you're voting for is whoever you're voting for. Have you paid attention as cannabis business owners to what and we don't know who the Democratic nominee is going to be, and somebody is taking on Trump from the Republican side, but have you paid attention to who is like the cannabis policy or ideas that some of these candidates have?
A little bit, yeah. And then, but not too much. It seems like most of the candidates seem to be pretty for federal legalization.
Do you think that, I agree. Do you think that, when do you think cannabis will be federally legal? Not like that. When do you think cannabis will be federally legal in the U.S.?
A lot of it depends on the election.
Right?
So, yeah, I mean, but yeah, most of the candidates or candidates seem to be pretty for federal legalization. Joe Biden has seemed to have been the one who's seemed to be the least for that, at least quickly. But I guess it depends. I guess we have to see what happens in 2020. After that happens, and you ask me the question, I'll have a better answer.
Okay. No, it's totally true because, I mean, we know the writing's on the wall. It's just, I had always said, I mean, even 2016, I was like, 2023. That was like my bet. I was like, that's when it will become federally legal. I don't know. I hope that it's around that time, just because there's so many things that, with 280E and just you can't travel across state lines, and we're crippled by so many things because it's federally illegal, right? Banking, all that stuff. So I'm like, oh, what will the industry be?
Huge.
That's huge.
Right? It's going to be huge when it happens.
Are you still betting on 2023?
Yeah. I mean, why not? I don't have any money on the table. Okay, are you ready for the speed round?
Okay, what's the speed round?
The speed round is not scary at all. And I haven't done a podcast interview for a year, so I'm getting back into it. So I don't have them memorized anymore, but it's just to get to know you. I don't want you to think too much about it. Whoever wants to answer can answer, and it's much more about you and your why. And maybe I even asked you one of the questions of the speed round. Are you ready?
Yeah, okay.
It's not like what your favorite food is or anything like that. Okay, so you have such a lofty goal, right? I love the goal. You are so determined. I can see it through kind of just this interview. What keeps you going when times are tough?
Mary.
Just knowing that, we have this goal and we want to help save the ocean and really make an impact on the marine life and our environment, all the climate change. And that really helps to keep me going when it's hard, because knowing that we can do this, we can make a positive impact and have a great business.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. That we can do something better than we're doing something better for the world than just making money.
Yeah.
So.
Yes. What is one piece of advice you wish you had known when starting your business?
Mary?
I don't know. What do you think?
I was going to say how hard it was, but then it's like, that's something I probably wouldn't want to know, because I might not have done it. How hard it was.
Knowing that, just to keep going, like, even though it's hard. And
I would say knowing how some of the legal market was going to hash out. Nobody knew. Everyone's kind of just like, okay, we're going to kind of hedge our bets here, try to make it from the medical to the recreational, and to know, like 2020, how some of that was going to play it out. I might have made some decisions, but nobody knew. We just had to guess.
Mm-hmm. And then we talk about work-life balance, and entrepreneurs, it's hard for us to find.
Yeah, for sure.
A family-owned business, I bet it's a little bit harder. What do you do that gets you outside of thinking about business?
Go to the gym.
Yeah, go to the gym, spend time at the beach.
Yeah,
those are the two big things for us.
Oh, those are some really good ones. I think that helps us. It moves the energy. It makes us feel alive and vibrant. It gets rid of stress. It's needed.
Yes, It is, definitely.
Well, that was a speed round. Do you guys want to share anything else before we end?
Mary?
I just am excited to get the word out there and get people to know that what we're doing and to help support that.
Yes. And how can they find you?
On Instagram, we're at Ocean Cannabis Co.
Website.
And our website.
OceanCannabisCo.com.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much. I'm so thank you for taking the time, and continue the good mission and the good fight. And let's connect before the end of the year.
Okay, for sure.
It
sounds
sounds
great.
All right. Thank you for listening to today's show. This is your host, Simone Samaluka-Radzins of Calagia.com. I hope that you find this episode entertaining and insightful. My goal is to educate all of you about this exciting business, because knowledge is power. If you haven't already, head on over to Calagia.com to connect with me and to meet other business leaders in the professional cannabis community. Also, if you like this, please go into iTunes and leave the Cannabis Business Minds podcast a 5-star review. See you next episode.